today our group will be discussing the 2018 eruption of Volcán de Fuego, which was a devastating volcanic eruption that affected the lives of over 1 million people living in Guatemala.
So to begin, the type of disaster is geophysical, and we can see this by the fact that there are tectonic and seismic forces occurring.
The Fuego volcano is located just 10 miles away from Antigua, the former capital of Guatemala. And if you look in the map above, Guatemala is actually located right on the Ring of Fire, which is an area known to be very tectonically active. And the bottom right-hand figure shows the population within a certain distance from the volcano. For example, within 10 kilometers, or 6 miles, there are roughly 54,000 people living. Onto some background about the tectonic activity of the area. The Fuego volcano is actually formed as a result of a subduction zone. In this case, the Cocos Plate is subducting into the Caribbean Plate, as you can see here. The diagram on the bottom right actually shows the oceanic crust subducting into the continental crust. When this occurs, the subducting plate is bringing in sediments and water and heating up thanks to the asthenosphere, creating a gaseous molten rock that eventually builds up the pressure to break through the ground. Subduction zones are also responsible for the production of volcanic arcs, which explain why there are so many volcanoes around Fuego itself. And this type of subduction zone creates stratovolcanoes like the Fuego volcano. Its steep cone shape could be attributed to the composition of the magma. It's a very viscous magma, meaning when it exits the volcano, it doesn't travel very far. So layers of alternating cooled magma and pyroclastic flow build up these very steep sides. Stratovolcanoes also tend to be very explosive because its gaseous magma moves up through the main vent and eventually builds up enough pressure to eject pyroclastic materials.
The 2018 Fuego eruption. Guatemala's Fuego volcano began erupting at 1 p.m. June 3, 2018, with a massive explosion. This large blast was overlooked as another small ash explosion that frequents the area due to the active volcano. Fuego is considered a stratovolcano, meaning that an eruption can be highly volatile and dangerous. The composition of a stratovolcano being layers of lava, ash, and rock mixed with its explosivity made for an immense amount of ash and other projectiles to come plummeting from the volcano. The ash plume reached a height of 10 kilometers. The most destructive part of the eruption came soon after in the form of pyroclastic flow, which is the superheated gas and debris that came tumbling down the mountain at an incredible speed. Most damage and deaths have been attributed to the pyroclastic flow, as the superheated gases and ash burn the lungs of anyone who inhales, and deaths should quickly follow for those unfortunate enough to be stuck in its path. This pyroclastic flow and the massive ash plume covered a total of a 12-mile radius, burying some parts in a few meters of mud and ash. Facts about the 2018 Fuego eruption. 1.7 million people were affected in Guatemala. The Fuego volcano is very active, but the 2018 eruption was much more violent and unexpected. A 12-mile radius was covered in volcanic ash. The death toll is confirmed to be over 190. The eruption had an economic impact of roughly 200 million. With 186 homes being destroyed in Escuintla, 16,932 small-scale farmers, and 13,611 hectares of crops were affected.
This disaster brought to light many significant blind spots within the government and the procedures for natural disasters. It brought attention to how the Guatemalan government handles the natural disasters, and this brought pressure to do better from the public. And better procedures were also introduced. So, for example, Before, the officials had only installed one single seismometer on the volcano, which is not enough. And so they learned after this tragedy that they should definitely put more. And 9 seismometers were added and are currently tracking the volcano activity. And also, more scientists are paying attention, which will hopefully lead to less tragedy in the future if the volcano does erupt again, or when it does. And the other blind spot was that it does erupt fairly constantly, and this led the government to not take action for a very long time because they believed that it wasn't going to be serious because they see this kind of activity fairly often. So by looking at their mistakes and reviewing the blind spots, they have now learned how to better deal with future eruptions. Now, the impact on human history, it was, of course, a warning to others. It was just a warning for people to be more conscious of natural disasters and that they need to be more prepared and more vigilant. And of course, it was also a traumatic event that impacted human history. It's just something that will be remembered for a very long time, considering how many people died and how many people were injured.
What makes a volcanic eruption so dangerous is the amount of people who get affected. Now, this number could be greatly decreased if the established villages around the volcano were better prepared for future eruptions.